Hello! So today I wanted to do something a little bit different than my normal videos of just showing off the game. I wanted to give back to the community a little bit and make a tutorial on something that I have not seen anyone else make. I've had other tutorials that helped making this tutorial, but nothing that correlates to this directly. And so what I'm talking about is the rotation system of this game. So you see how my cube can like bonk around and rotate and stuff? Ignore the little flashes on him. And even sometimes he'll get off kilter. But then, if I can get him off kilter again, maybe not. There we go. Look, he's a little bit off. But then as soon as he starts moving, he gets on kilter again and locks himself in that place again and stays stuck in it pretty well. That is the tutorial I want to go over today, and also how he can continue to rotate and go up and all that stuff and all this crazy stuff. So I will see you in the blueprint. Okay, so here we are in the blueprint, but before we get lost in these weeds over here, I wanted to go over the two other ways that, should be possible, but just don't work in my case. So the first one is the physics constraint, and you can just slap this on onto anything, any blueprint actor that has physics. Right there, that guy. And you get all these settings over here and stuff, and it can help you aim at where you need to go. It's physics based, but it's not quite what I wanted. And I'll probably put up a video of it right now of me actually using it in game, but it doesn't allow as much freedom as I wanted, along with down here. And so the rotation is just kind of weird. I don't know how to describe it besides showing you. So this is the setting we have it for my system, but without it, I would normally expect, lock the Z axis so that, we don't twirl around like a little ballerina. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So this is us, and you see how I would expect to be able to go over that right there, but I can't. And you see how I'm still twirling? And so the Z axis is like relative. It's rotating with me, so your locked position does not stay there. So that's why this is not going to work. And I've tried to get this to work. If I could have gotten this to work instead of making this behemoth, I definitely would have. And then the second way is on the static mesh itself. Here, get rid of that. So where is the rotation? So right here, you can also see you can lock the rotation constraints. I like these a little bit better, but they still don't do the job because they get something called gimbal locking. And you can look that up if you want to. That's not for this video, but it has been the bane of my existence in trying to get this to work. So let me show you what that looks like. So it does work a little better. I was able to get over that, but then if I try and rotate forward, can't do it. Gimbal locked. Let's see. Yeah, and then start all this. Ugh. So that doesn't work either, unfortunately, and trust me, I really wanted that one to work. But Unreal does not have it in a way that easily works that way. Okay, so with that stuff out of the way, let's begin. So let's just get a general overview, and yes, it is kind of a monster. There's quite a bit. I mean, it's not like the craziest thing ever. I'll make no of those. But it is pretty big, and we're gonna go through and build this. But I just wanted to give you a general overview of what's happening. So I went ahead and made a new blueprint actor. That's not correct. Hold on one second. You want to make him pawn, not actor. Pawn. I just did this entire tutorial, and now I'm gonna have to redo some stuff, but yeah, be sure to make him pawn so that you can actually possess him and move him around, unless if you are just making an actor, so don't worry about that. Anyway, see you later. Nothing fancy on here. Let me delete that real quick. So go ahead and first we're going to add just a general cube here. You guys can add whatever you want, but it's easier just to start off with the cube. Okay. As I fat finger everything. And then also you're going to want to add that physics constraint. Yes, there it is. And I guess I'm just going to go ahead and set all these beforehand. Let's see here. So yeah, go ahead and come down here to rotation or angular limits and go ahead and set that. I believe that's everything that we need to do. No, it's not. Here. We also have to then come up here and add this to component name. Matches this guy. I don't quite remember why I did that. I made this like a year ago, but I think it's important to get the physics constraint to actually attach to the cube itself. Okay, so how about this? I'm gonna go ahead and make each section, like fast forward through it, and then I'll explain why I did everything, or maybe a mishmash of both. We'll see how it goes in the recording. Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to be getting physics constraint world rotation here. Get and so before I can continue making this section, we actually do need a couple of variables over here to begin with. So make sure these ones are set to vector, and we're going to make 3 of them, x vector, and then go ahead and duplicate that and call this one y, and then duplicate that and then call this one z. And these are going to be they're going to come in use later on. But first, let's compile, and we're going to set them. These are just standard vectors that we're going to be using. Don't set that to a 2, set that one to a 1. And make sure these are all in your respective positions. This is z vector, make sure it's in the z slot, y vector, y, x, x. Or else something's not going to work and you're going to have no idea why. Okay, so what we're going to do with this z vector, actually, let's explain this part a little bit more. So what we're getting here is the physics constraint. And so I don't know if I can show you this. Where's my cube? Here it is. Yeah. So these are 2 separate entities. The physics constraint is directly in the middle of the cube we want to rotate, and we're attaching it to the cube. And we'll go over this a little bit more later, but we can rotate these independently of each other. So if we want just the cube rotating by itself, we can do that. If we want this controlling the rotation of the cube, we can do that too. And so that's why we're getting this rotation right here, because we're going to be checking to see how far off this physics constraint is throughout the time. But anyway, we'll get into that a little bit more. This is one of those things where you just have to kind of make it and then explain it afterwards and then try and understand it later, because it is kind of a hairy mess. Okay, so let's go over this part a little bit more. I don't know if you guys know what a dot is, but it pretty much just gets two vectors and decides how close they are together, or how close they are aiming at the same direction. And it can range from -1 to 1. 1 is like they're aiming directly, and -1 is like they couldn't be further apart from aiming from each other. Okay, so what this is doing on a timer, you know, checking this .z amount every whatever time you set it to. We're checking to see if this physics constraint, the thing that's right there, is it pointing up? And if it's not, how far off is it? And so I check to see if it's off by, this should be negative. If it's off by this much, then we need to do something because we're starting to flip over. And knowing when we're about to flip over is very important for physics constraints, because physics constraints have this nasty habit of breaking if there's just a single one by itself, if it rotates beyond 180 degrees in like any direction. So, and this took me a long time to figure out, if it rotates 190 degrees, all of its constraints will just stop working, and you'll just no controls going on there at all. And so with that in mind, let's move on to over here. So let's go ahead and grab our physics constraint. And again, sorry, this is hard to explain because a lot of these things come in later and you have no context of what's going on. So it's probably just better for me to make it and then explain it, as maybe come back and explain it even. So here, let's see here. Actually, let's come in here. Break constraint. And what this is going to do is this prevents this physics constraint from locking. So instead of being able to lock this specific area, this rotation point, swing 1 and swing 2 aren't exactly in the X and Y axis. They're more, what's the word? Relative. And I don't quite remember exactly which one does what, but I just remember that break constraint breaks everything, and so this thing is no longer working. And we need to do that so that later on we can flip the entire, just the physics constraint, so that it doesn't break again, to avoid that 180 degree thing. And so this is just preempting break constraint. Now we're gonna fiddle around with the cube. But anyway, let me make that real quick. Okay, montage time. So, first we break the constraint, or the constraint, and then we reset its world rotation. So if it's just about to hit that 180 mark, we're gonna flip it back up to 0, 0, 0, 0. And this just makes sure that we set it to 0, 0, 0, 0. And hopefully you got to see that, you know, you have to drag off of this and then set that. Again, I've tested it without both of these, and for some reason you need both. I don't know what's all going on underneath the hood. I just know that this works, and this resets the constraint, because resetting the constraint is actually quite a pain in the butt. And then the last node right here will reattach the cube to the constraint so that now it's back upright. The constraint is back up, right? But it doesn't matter what the cube is at right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually, before we head on up to the main meats and potatoes of this thing, let's go ahead and name these real quick. So it's physics, constraint, repetition, and come on over here. Text, physics, okay, so in this next section I can't really make because there's going to be canceling out timers that we haven't made yet. So let's do this instead. We're just going to put one in this spot for now. And it only needs to be a boolean. Flip-flop. And I know there's a flip-flop mechanic or a flip-flop node already in here, but this doesn't allow as much control as what I'm about to do. Actually, there's a new system. Convert to branch, yeah. But we don't need a branch right now. So let's go ahead and just do this. This will make sense later. And reset everything. Don't worry, we're gonna come back to this. This is just a staging point for later on. So we're gonna make a sequence. We're gonna have 3 areas. Okay, so this next section, we're gonna be detecting if the cube is still rotating or not before we decide to start leveling him out, or before, you know, we try and make him straight forward. And so how we're going to do that is first we're going to have to decide, or first detect, which side of the cube is up. And let me go ahead and fast forward through this section, but I'll still show everything. Okay. Oh, and almost forgot this guy. So to be honest with you, I don't completely understand how this works, but ultimately this algorithm, I guess you could say, gets us which side is up. It sets these integers to whatever one, and only one pulse will go through this entire thing. So it starts by getting the x, y, and z and comparing each side, each of the cube, to a z vector that's pointing straight up. I'm pointing with my hand, you can't see that. And we set them all here, but then also we get an absolute value because it makes it easier to use this max right here. And this max tells us, okay, which one's bigger, and whichever one is the biggest means that that side is pointing up. Say like the z side of the cube, see this is the z side of the cube, is the biggest, say it's 1. That means this is going to be biggest, and it's going to be true here, so it's going to carry on. So that means z is biggest. But then the second part right here, we don't know which z of the cube is up. Is it the top of the cube or the bottom of the cube? We don't know. And I know that's kind of confusing, but that's how this works. So if this is negative, that's the bottom, and if it's positive, that's the top. And so knowing that is important for the next section, which I'm going to have a little montage of making that as well. Okay, welcome back. So just a heads up, my recording broke, so I have to redo this section, and some things are already done, but we'll go over all that. So, what is this section doing? What is this overall section doing? It's detecting if the cube is still flipping or not. And what I mean by that is, like, if it's tumbling throughout the level, we don't want to move on to the next section. We want the cube to be like one side is staying up for the entire time. And this is how we achieve that. So it checks if the cube is up. If one side of the cube is up every 0.5 seconds, you can increase this if you want, decrease it. But if you make it slower, the cube will react slower. But if you make it too fast, then the cube could try and fix itself too soon when it's still tumbling. So I found that 0.5 seconds is a good medium for it. So, and this is just the flip-flops. So what are we doing here? Well, we're getting that current side up that we already set down here. And these guys' sequences are very important because this bottom part has to go first, and then this can go, because this is calculating which side of the cube is up, and then this is calculating, all right, is that side still up? And if not, do not move on to the next section. If it is true, if they do equal each other, then move on to the next section. And you can see that it flip-flops itself. So every time this goes off, it comes through here, goes out throughout there, it'll flip to the next side. And then next time, it'll go up here. And it's just setting these guys and flipping it and checking if they're equal. And if they are, that means the cube has probably stopped tumbling. It's been about a second. So we're probably safe to move on to the next part, which is this. So we'll go over these a little bit more. This is just canceling out this handle. And this is a future, actually timer, I should say timer. This is a future timer right here in the next section, but we'll come back to that later. And the lovely part about this next section here is you can just copy and paste this entire section here, but you do need to change one thing. Instead of the Z vector, you want to get this guy, put him right there, or else that'll mess up this next section after this, because this one is detecting this is wrong, which side is forward on the cube, which side of the cube is forward instead, and that's important for this next section. Okay, so didn't realize how long this video is getting. I'm probably going to split this into 2 separate videos. Alright, well, I guess I'll see you all later.